Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Software Sales Simplified Move to Success, the podcast for software sales professionals who want to become better sellers. I'm Kevin Donville, and I'm here with my esteemed co-host, Matt Long. Between the two of us, we have over 50 years of software sales experience. Matt, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Kevin. Glad to be here for another episode. Very excited to speak with our guest today, Josh.
Yeah, me too. So, folks, please remember, follow, like, or subscribe to the show and join us here each week, wherever you get your favorite podcast, and we'll move to success together. And as Matt just mentioned, we're here with our special guest today, Josh Gillespie. Josh is the head of growth at Omni. Josh, how are you doing today?
I have no complaints whatsoever. Yeah, doing great. Fantastic. What is it? Like the fourth day of spring, sun is shining. Yeah, nothing to lose. Feeling great.
And we're inside on a podcast instead of being outside enjoying the great outdoors. Now, Josh, I've had the privilege of being able to work with you in the past, but for those that aren't familiar with you and don't know what you do, tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are and your claim to fame.
Sure. I don't know if I have a claim to fame yet, but stay humble, right? But yeah, I've been in sales since 2008. Kind of an anti-sales guy in a lot of ways. I was a philosophy major in college. I was a social worker out of college, and then found myself kind of out of necessity needing to get a sales job just to make more money and survive in San Francisco, a city that I had fallen in love with after college. And I think since 2008, when I got my start, also during the down period in the economy, cut my teeth making $150 a day, doing a sales job I hated, but ultimately that launched a really awesome career that included taking another company from 5 employees to 1,000 and, $0 in revenue to close to $100 million in unicorn status. So that was probably my claim to fame. And yeah, now I'm a head of growth at a 5-person AI startup, trying to do it all over again.
Matt and I have been through that process before of actually taking a company from very small, humble beginnings and making them something really big and super special. I know what that's like, and trying to capture that magic and that lightning in a bottle again. I can understand the desire to want to do that. So, I mean, here you are now, you're over on AI sales, definitely different from where you started out. You were talking about philosophy major and then being a social worker. What was your kind of trajectory? You started out with that small, simple, humble job that you were saying was sales. What kind of led you? Did you always kind of have an eye on becoming a sales leader? Was that kind of your goal at the time?
No, not at all. I really am more introverted in nature. My idea of what it meant to be a salesperson was one thing that I think is quite commonly shared until folks start doing the job. And then maybe even after. But yeah, over time, I was just kind of able to find my niche in being kind of my own type of salesperson, which was more highly targeted, more focused, more thoughtful, more oriented towards kind of research and coming extremely prepared to every call, knowing that if I wasn't, I would put myself in these kind of uncomfortable motions. So even though I had no idea that I really wanted to be a salesperson until it kind of happened, when it happened, it kind of made sense. And then I kind of started having a lot of success doing it. So I figured I might as well try to build off that. And yeah, the more success you have, the more interesting maybe something becomes. And it was a process of many, many years. I've been one of the worst salespeople on a team, and I've been the best person on a sales team or the best producer for a decade straight. So yeah, I would just say all of that is to say, like, our success in sales really has more to do with time and place and product market fit and things that are kind of uncontrollable, more so than our own even like skills and abilities a lot of the time.
Well, now you find yourself over in this wonderful AI world, which is definitely a different kind of world than the traditional type of sales that we used to do in the past. When you made this leap to go over to where you are now, how did you, first of all, how did they find you? How did they become connected with you? And what was it about that position and that company that made you interested in jumping over to them?
I think in general, right, we've all felt kind of the saturation of messaging from these new AI companies, from ChatGPT, right, kind of entering the space, entering the vernacular. And a lot of them make grandiose claims. So I think I had fear of missing out, right? Fear of getting old, fear of, getting surpassed by younger folks that know how to leverage these tools. So for me, it was a lot of kind of scared about what's coming. I should probably get to know some of this stuff, even though in a lot of ways throughout my history, I've been kind of tech averse and averse to like adopting new things. Like I'm pretty sure I was the last person on the planet that demanded from Salesforce that they not turn off my classic and force me to use Lightning, even though it's obviously a much better solution. Like I liked what I like. And in sales, right, we're highly superstitious too. Once we have success and don't often want to change. But for me, even just playing with GPT like a little bit, using Perplexity to search for things instead of Google, kind of seeing the outputs take steps in these pretty impressive directions, whether it's helping with creative stuff where you might be blocked, like writing an email or creating a slide deck or an image that I can use in a social post. There's so many kind of use cases where we probably should be leveraging this technology, but still aren't for whatever reasons. And that caused me to think about probably the time is good to join another 5-person startup and see if we can do it again. And let's just hitch our wagon to like the most talented engineer I can find, knowing that, AI, unlike the SaaS world, of the last 15 years, it's moving 50 to 100 times faster when we talk about how it's developing in all the ways. So yeah, just for FOMO, fear of not wanting to miss out, that kind of caused me to get into Omni.
That's a powerful motivator. I mean, that's completely legitimate, right? I mean, it is transformative. And what's happening in the AI market space these days with the development, the rapid gold rush, everybody talking about how data is the new oil, right? So there's a lot to be said for wanting to go in and become part of that transformation in the market. But Omni is just one player there. So tell us a little bit about Omni. What is that? What is the company? What does it do? And kind of what's its value?
Before we
Like it,
do, we should probably clarify for our listeners that Omni is spelled Aomni, because
thank
there
you.
there isn't one or two other Omnis out there. So we want to make sure we're clear which one we're talking about. We'll also have links, of course, in the description to it as well. But I just want to make that distinction before we go in. Sorry to
That's good.
interrupt, Josh, but
Thank
No, that's a good point. Thanks for calling it out, man.
those silent A's right at the beginning of a word can be difficult to catch. So if you want to call it Aomni, that's perfectly acceptable too. For me, especially when I moved up in the world, as an enterprise rep, the job got a lot harder with a lot more like manual tasks to do the job well, usually around research, right? Because as an enterprise rep, you
Mhm.
probably have a set book of 20 to 100 or so named accounts. That's your territory. Cool, go figure out how to inspire an opportunity. And from there, right, like research, like deep account based research, searching for evidence of opportunity, some publicly stated need or pain that I can point to make my prospecting feel more organic was
Mhm.
what I inevitably was spending the most time on, right? Being a gumshoe. And that's fun, but it takes forever. And you probably don't want to take up call hours doing that type of work. So for me, it was just a lot of 80-hour work weeks to do my job well, being prepared to say the right things to the right people at the right time.
Mhm.
Omni is a research solution for enterprise sellers.
Mhm.
So we don't require a whole lot of effort on behalf of our users. They can pretty much just plug in their website. We'll do deep research on them to come up with like the disposition of their of their sales team. So what's their competitive differentiators? What's their market differentiators? What are their products? Who are their competitors? What are their customer stories? What are the success metrics that they've achieved for their existing customers? And then once we have all of that context, takes about 5 minutes for us to go get based on them just plugging in their URL. Then we ask them to first know who their ICP is, who their named accounts are, and then to also then give us the URLs of those prospects. And then we'll do deep research on those prospects. And again, look for strategic data or correlation between what you're attempting to sell and what someone has publicly said, whether it's in their 10K or financial disclosures, whether it's online somewhere on a blog post, whether it's hidden in a social media comment. We're multi-model, so we're essentially leveraging all of the large language models concurrently to go find the data that sellers can then use to again then make their prospecting feel organic. And
Mhm.
that's all we do. We're not over promising that we're going to replace humans or make phone calls or be an effective deep fake or be a more personalized at scale type of spray and pray
Mm.
mechanism. And I think that messaging really resonates because ultimately it's still humans, right? Quarterbacking the revenue game. And they don't want to be replaced. They just want something that works and is simple to use. And yeah, most of the time we're actually displacing use of ChatGPT, which is great and a step in the right direction, but also not really set up to be a business solution. Doesn't integrate with our existing tech stack and is really geared to more kind of B2C scenarios and broad outputs as opposed to figuring out strategically how I should engage somebody.
Yeah, I have two questions for you, Josh. It's really interesting. Thanks for going through that. And I think it's super valuable because like you, I spend a lot of time doing research. I like being as prepared as possible before I go into the meeting and have a lot of other contextual information about my prospect. Because whenever you mention that, they feel, they're very happy that you've actually done some research and can have an intelligent conversation. First question is just around, the when you're coming up with what is your value or position in the market and things like that. How often does that vary from what product marketing has already determined it is? Is that something you have to tweak at all, or what is
Man,
that like?
such a great question with probably an obvious answer, but yes, right? If we're web scraping and we're reading what's been posted online, especially if one of those sources is a company's website, from a product marketing standpoint, yeah, their objection is usually to drive traffic and probably have messaging that's more or less broad and kind of opening up maybe the potential addressable market, as opposed to really narrowing the scope to what they're great at, even if it's just one thing, which is what we're often trying to do more on the sales side. So, yes, product marketing is ripe with grandiose claims and perhaps overselling or even miscategorizing, themselves on purpose as a test at times. Company's website is just one place that we're looking with all of these models. And yeah, we're looking for commonalities between the resources and then surfacing insights based on the ones that appear to be the most consistent.
Yeah, I think
So
they are
that's
they
one
are
way.
trying to cast a rather wide net in terms of different use cases and things. But as we know, when you're talking with a prospect, if you're not right on point with what they care about and what they need, it's kind of a fruitless conversation. My second question, not to put you on the spot, but I'm assuming that being enterprise sellers yourself, that you use your platform. And I'm just curious, what are some of the insights or surprising things that you've gotten from using it actually in your endeavors?
Just how almost every time I use it, it finds evidence of opportunity. So maybe some news article or blog post or
Mm.
social media post, something online that's like the golden nugget, right,
Mm,
of relevance
mm,
that I was using, that I was looking for, that I otherwise would have never found, no matter how many hours I spent gumshoeing online. A lot of the gold is really buried. And I think
mm,
we have common places we'll look to surface it, like a company's 10K if they're a public company. Sure, download it, upload it into Perplexity or something and get a breakdown. They're talking about their initiatives ahead for the year and where they're making their investments. I'm sure you can find something relevant in there, but if everybody's doing that, then also, take note that the saturation of that play is going to make it less effective over time. So it really is about finding novel insights from novel places
Mm.
as a means of building trust and proving that you know a company at a deep level, hence your outreach. And if that's believable based on like the information you find, you're already in a much better spot than whatever other type of kind of assumed segmented outreach you have going on.
Yeah, Matt and I are really big on, obviously, as you know, we've had conversations, you and I offline before about this, about discovery. And so much about discovery is a matter of perspective and being able to ask relevant questions and knowing how to phrase your value and ask questions to understand more about their pains, their challenges and threats, even if they don't know how to articulate it themselves, is so predicated on understanding where they're coming from. So is
Yeah.
that sort of the angle you guys are going at? Because you talked about there's things out there like Chat GPT. You guys are better at being able to consolidate and present that in order
Yeah.
for people to be able to digest it and act on it?
Of course. I mean, especially because usually our discovery calls, right, are with one person. If we're
Mm.
lucky, maybe some committee, but even then on a introductory discovery call, it's hard, peeling the onion. It's hard getting a new, business relationship to convey all of their problems. They probably don't want to talk to about their deepest issues with a brand new third party until at least like some and rapport have been built up,
Right.
until we have an NDA on file and so forth. So I think, yeah, coming with novel insights can help inspire a second and third kind of layer of onion peeling during that discovery. Because you're not just coming with kind of your, you know, what are your big rocks, type of kind of questions, forcing people like to like dragging them through the glass. You should kind of already come prepared with like a snapshot of the glass on the ground and an idea of how it got there.
No faster way to delegitimize yourself in the eyes of the customer than not understanding their business terminology in their space.
Yes. But what's important to note is even though some of these tools like Omni are incredibly helpful, can save us an incredible amount of time, it's still really important for me to come to discovery with like a skeptical selling disposition. I'll still start my discovery with trying to flip, right? That parent child relationship. We often find ourselves being the child in to start with a more parental question like, what are you hoping to accomplish? Explain to me why you took this call at all. What assumptions do you have about what Omni is and does today before I tell you? And starting off with kind of a, why are you here? And like, who are you to even get a demo from me in the first place? And, knowing that that's still extremely important, right? As far as the engagement goes, regardless of what information I may still have collected and know in advance.
I know that Matt and I both have very strong opinions on discovery. What you're talking about, you are in a five-man shop, but you're still talking about the basics of blocking and tackling with respect to selling, even though you're in this AI startup. What are some of those unique challenges? It's got to be different than what you've done in the past, but what are some of you're a growth leader now. What are some of the changes and challenges that are different now that you're in this space?
Sure, that I mean, it's tough, right? Because as a seller, I've had a pretty strict philosophy that's worked well to always be in the business of disqualification. Now it's my job to grow company revenues and double them every quarter in perpetuity moving forward. Luckily, I've been at a company that did that went from zero to $100 million. So it might not stress me out kind of thinking about it as much as some because there's a million things, especially on the growth side that we could and probably should be doing eventually. But it's also important to know that we're a company right now, basically at zero, trying to get to our first $1 million. And this is actually our time period through which to have fun, where we've got VC money, we've got money in the bank. The goal is to not blow through that money as quickly as possible just for the sake of growth. It's to, like an athlete, right? During the off season, I just want to add one thing to my game. I just want to get better at one skill. If I'm a basketball player, maybe it's I want to improve my 3-point percentage, or I want to improve my free throw percentage, or I want to get better at driving to the basket left. Let's just focus on one thing at a time, get good at it till we make it either effective in driving revenue or not, and then move to another thing. And so, yeah, I just kind of have a slower, maybe more plotting methodology to growing a company that's worked well, knowing that you really only need like the full quiver of arrows firing off at a later state when the goals are much higher. Right now, there's like a million ways to get to $1 million, right? So like, let's do the ones that we actually enjoy, that are fun. Let's go to as many conferences and just do more face-to-face stuff as possible. Let's do more podcasts. Let's do more webinar content. I have an amazing sales career that I should be talking about more. My founder, Dave, on the engineering side, was a NASA engineer that put the Mars rover on Mars and was part of that team.
Wow.
So let's talk about things that build up, that let people know who we are more so than try to like what we're attempting to sell and stuff like that.
Yeah, this is you said the second time you've kind of gone to a startup, right? And
Yep.
it's obviously a very rewarding but high risk move for a lot of people. And there's a lot of startups happening right now. Are there a couple things that you could share that people, if they're considering a similar type of move, should evaluate or know before they jump into it?
Into an enterprise sales motion or job.
Or to do an AI start to any sort of startup, when you're coming in as a seller in those areas, what sort of things should you ask about just to be aware of? Yeah.
Mm.
Oh man, I mean, startup life, yeah, it's not for everyone. So it's just about who you are and what you want. I love startups because every day is completely different. There's a million things to be done. So I'm never for like, sitting around bored. Time flies. You get to wear a lot of hats. It's a big, big, big responsibility. And yeah, it can be extremely rewarding and fun. Obviously, you can get more equity at a smaller company, probably get a title, probably vary, right, your experience beyond just a job. But that's not like for everybody. It does involve a greater level of sacrifice too, where if it wasn't for my wife, it wasn't for my family, if it wasn't for the support of those around me, this may have been a bad job, right? Like not everyone wants to work 80 hours a week and sacrifice a lot of, you know, other stuff in their life. If you like value a work-life balance, well, maybe you shouldn't be in sales at all, but definitely not a startup. Like, it's not for everybody. And it really comes down to what you value as a human.
Yeah.
Don't just do it for some image thing. Do it because you're entrepreneurial and like you've seen other businesses get built, maybe other people get rich off equity and you know that you could do it too. Then yeah, take a shot on yourself. And you might not know if you love it or hate it until you try it. And that's okay too. It's all part of life.
Yeah, I think, 25 or so years ago, at the height of the first .com boom, that's when Kevin and I both got involved in sales. And that was kind of the approach in all of the Bay Area, Silicon Valley was like you got to work here, you got to get equity. You're working really hard. I mean, we were constantly putting in 60+ hour weeks, Kevin, at that point, and that was expected across the board. And it was interesting how that kind of mindset carried on past the time where the companies going public and everyone getting really rich off of that is become less and less. It still happens on occasion,
Yeah,
but at the beginning, it felt like everyone was going to do that, and there was a driver. So it's interesting
sure.
seeing now with AI coming out, it's a little bit going back to that a little bit more of the Wild West. And so to that end, I'm just curious, now that you've been in it for a while, what do you see as the proliferation of AI companies in the market? Do you think it's going to continue expanding? It's going to start consolidating? Do you have any thoughts on that?
All of the above. It's just all happening so much faster that it's just crazy. But yeah, like to your point, in the zero interest rate period, right? The ZERP era, we saw, I forget what it was at its peak, but one year had like hundreds of IPOs. And yeah, companies were growing, doing Series Cs, having secondary transactions, going IPO, and that, created a lot of opportunity for those who had equity to have 6, 7, 8-figure payouts. The promise of that, due to global markets and time and place, kind of isn't there, right? Like we've seen less than a handful of IPOs like the last few years. So do we believe that at some point it'll speed up again and tech companies will be in a similar place? Maybe, right? Like again, I started my career in 2000 and like, yeah, like the next 10 years after that, off that kind of economic down period, were amazing. But nothing is given. Like, maybe things go in cycles, maybe they don't. I have no idea. But what I do know is that AI companies, for the most part, it's more expensive to run their tech than it is, a good old fashioned SaaS product. And it does feel more like the wild, wild west in that a lot of the startups, I think, are more concerned with user growth. Whereas there was a trend of wanting to be profitable or caring about at least having a path to profitability, right? On the basis of making your business more predictable and scalable and all of that. But yeah, now I think times have changed very quickly to where revenue isn't that predictable, or if that's your focus, you're probably focusing on predictably bad revenue or like inbound revenue and demand type gen of revenue, because outbound has probably become more unpredictable than ever. And yeah, all of that is to say, with the cost of running these businesses being greater and the path to monetization actually being like slower in a lot of ways, it does feel like we're just trying to build products and throw them at the wall a lot of times and hoping something sticks, which leads me to believe a lot of these companies will either fail get acquired and gobbled up. And there'll probably be some huge winners, and there already are, right? When we think about OpenAI and the amount of revenue that they've fundraised and are doing, but a lot of businesses will fail too. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, you're bringing up a lot of really interesting questions, and I can see you were brought up 2008. There were a number of different challenges that we were facing in the marketplace at that time, and it really did put a lot of sellers and services delivery people as well in a really interesting position that they hadn't been before leading up to that in order to be able to promise and deliver value. You just named a couple of different challenges now that are germane to the AI space. If you were going to give advice to somebody who's looking to come in thinking to, I think I want to dip my toe in the water, or I'm being approached by some of these AI companies to come and join, what are some of
Yeah.
the other challenges they should know about? Because this is a very unusual market to find oneself in. It's very similar to what Matt and I first saw at the turn of the last of the 20th first century here, with respect to how the market just transformed overnight. What are some of the other challenges someone looking to get into AI should think of?
It's just in the level setting of it all, because I think when people hear AI, first off, AI messaging is saturated. So you'll get a lot of, oh no, like another AI B2B sales product, just what we wanted, just what everyone was asking for. So there's that, right? Like we've already been for a couple of years now, just hearing about AI this, AI that. And it's created an expectation of magic. Like there are magical qualities to this tech that I think we've all perceived, probably using ChatGPT and being blown away by the output, or its ability to help with some type of creative work. And on the business side too, if you're a new AI company, presumably you're developing something new for the world that's never been seen. So show me the wizardry of it all. Show me the magic, and just be aware. Tech is still tech. It's still a tool, still needs, especially today, a human in the loop. It needs subject matter expertise. It needs maintenance. It needs administering the right way. It needs onboarding and setup the right way. There's no magic button, right? For a thing to just help us do our jobs better in like a magical way. But there's that expectation that that product exists. And so kind of in an interesting way, it might feel counterintuitive, I suppose, but we've had a lot of success just being honest in limiting the scope of what we do, even if maybe, we take a little of the magic out of it in doing so, like that's okay. I would just beware of companies, again, that are making grandiose claims as to the magic of it all and how we're going to help you replace humans, and how we can help you personalize all of your campaigns at scale and be better at spray and pray. Like if the tech is using AI to implement bad sales plays, those are still bad sales plays through which AI won't help the conversion of.
Mm, good
So
point.
we're actually just limiting the scope and under promising, believe it or not, what our tech can do, to then get to better kind of aha moments that are within the scope of what we can do for somebody, and not promising that we're here to replace humans or make them ex salespeople just by virtue of logging into our platform. Like that's not how it works.
You guys
Yeah.
had a very interesting promotion going on just recently about that, right? About not replacing human beings.
Yeah,
Is it that strategy about we do this, being very precise about what it is you deliver and the value that you can achieve for them? Is
uh-huh.
that your secret sauce for success going forward?
100%. And it's kind of annoying to us that our space is so saturated with these grandiose claims and these advertisements that say, like, stop hiring humans or replace humans now.
Right.
And it's like, or AI SDR this and AI SDR that. Like, what? Like, AI can't even like legally make a phone call like an SDR's best possible task, right? That they can get great at. There's just these misnomers where I think it speaks to the fact that outbound sales is seemingly broken for a lot, or at the very least, it's gotten a lot harder as the efficacy of our emails goes down, the efficacy of our cold calling goes down, the efficacy of our LinkedIn messaging goes down. I think there's this desperation where outbound sales, at least the way we used to do it, during the ZERP era, which was to hook up a sales engagement platform, spray emails to our entire addressable market, and then react to signals. Who opened the email? Who clicked on the link? Who did this? Who did that? The SaaS world, especially the last 15 years, was all geared towards making sales easier for the salesperson. And that's not wrong, but it's gotten us away from pure outbound. Who
Mm,
did you build your product or service for? Who is your real ICP? Who are the top 100 accounts in that ICP that would move the needle for you if you were to close them as a new business partner? Let's help you focus on being proactive and creating a signal that that company would want to respond to, as opposed for spraying like emails everywhere and then going like this and then reacting to, how sales has been done because of tech in a lot of way the last 15 years. I think is kind of the lazy, easy way. And people have an expectation that AI will help them do the job in even more of a like a lazy and easier fashion. And that's just not the case.
Yeah, I mean, we know that to be successful in tech sales, you really have to define a very clear value prop and a pain that they have, and something that they're going to benefit from it. And I think AI, from what I've seen, and again, I'm on the periphery here, is like they struggled with, what is the ultimate value that they can provide, and the head reduction of headcount is one that is kind of they played out a bit, but I think that one is coming to bite some people in the butt at this point, right?
Well, for certain tasks, I would agree, like, or engineering, right? It's getting pretty good at coding, or for maybe like lower level kind of customer support issues, it's getting pretty good at being immediately responsive and having a solution to known problems or common issues.
Right.
So maybe not so much for an SDR, which is where, yeah, we really disagree. But
Hmm.
for some options, for sure, yeah, it's already kind of having an impact as to how organizations are thinking about headcount.
Yeah, so that's one aspect, but I think there's also, do more with less, be better prepared, be and all those types of things. And I'm just curious from your perspective, because I've sold a lot of kind of evangelical platforms, right? Things around knowledge management or collaboration, which we know has benefit, but it's really hard to put an ROI number to that, right? And the same thing is like, well, you have enterprise sales motions now, you have all this research. How are people responding to it? Is that a nice to have, or are you able to solidify it as something really meaningful that's going to move the needle for them?
So this is where it gets interesting because we get tons of inbound enterprise ICs from huge logos
Mm.
coming, signing up for trials, and then asking to like procure like a month to month license using either their own personal credit card or like a company credit card that they can just write off because they want the solution and they want it now due to like, yeah, uh, the time savings, quite frankly, that we're able to afford them. But they don't want to wait 3 to 6 months by then recommending that we go through some formal procurement.
Mm.
So what's interesting is no matter how good the space is, it's, I think, very difficult for all of these AI providers to close a big contract up front on annual terms because of, quite frankly, all of the benefit being also viewed with some potential risk, right? Like, what are the guardrails of this thing? Who controls it in case it has a mind of its own and decides it wants like you could conceive of terrible things, right? Like what if it just wants to email all of my customers something completely inappropriate? What's the safeguard there? What internal systems and proprietary data might it have access to? And then how is this third party vendor that has 5 to 15 employees, like what's the SOC 2 equivalent, right, of an AI product? So a lot of the space still has some maturation to go
Mm.
through with respect to the enterprise sales motion and all of the checks and balances, right, that typically get involved in even like a 50 to 250K size deal. It can be quite like the 3 to 6 months like procurement rigmarole.
Mm.
Well, people want this tech. They want it now. They see it as giving them some first mover advantage, oftentimes against even their own sales team that they're always competing with, and are willing to pay for it out of pocket. So it's a good problem to have, but still one where we hope as the space evolves, as AI products become more commonplace, as IT directors and administrators and compliance and procurement professionals who are ultimately involved in like these decision makings get more acclimated then hopefully it becomes easier. But I'm not so sure. I think we're kind of reverting to a lot of down up sales cycles, a lot of what I call Operation Groundswell, which is we need 10 to 20 ICs addicted to Omni, using it like on their own, paying for it out of pocket, and then let's bring it up to leadership and see if we can get like a bigger deal done, knowing that there's tons of people that would like cry if it got pulled out of their tech stack. But also
Yeah, I
knowing
mean,
that's kind of delicate because they haven't told their leadership that they're using it yet, and maybe they shouldn't be.
it's a really interesting model, I think, that AI has come out with, that an individual person can go and acquire the technology and start leveraging it. Because a lot of the SaaS platforms in the past, there's a platform fee. There was just such a large cost to get it stood up
Mhm.
and running, et cetera. But it's
Yep.
interesting now that you have a model. I've seen this in other places too, where a seller, who's really good, wants to get better, and will put down their own credit card and pay for this sort of solution. So that's I think something that I've seen across the board for a lot of companies. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? Because like we force our users to slow down because the goal is to be strategic, not to necessarily just be cheaper and
Right.
faster and easier. So we force people to enter one account at a time that they want to research. And then we're leveraging all of these language models that also take time. So it could take sometimes upwards of 10 to 15 minutes for us to do research on an account. But what's cool is like we'll repeatedly see people come in and load one account at a time until they've
Mhm.
added all 100 to 800 accounts in some cases in their territory. And I'm thinking, wow, someone just took like 7 hours to do that, but they probably saved themselves 3 hours a day from having to do that research themselves on that many accounts. So it's kind of validating to see folks go through such like an interesting onboarding, experience that in SaaS terms would be completely unacceptable, but you get to a greater value in Omni at least doing it. And yeah, we're not automating that for them, but folks will still figure out the slow way of getting all of their accounts in there, which is pretty cool.
Josh, you're so passionate about this topic, and you and I've had some very exciting conversations offline where we've delved into the philosophy of all of AI and selling as well. And as much as I would love to continue on for the entire afternoon, we do need to bring it home. So I wanted to ask you a question for all the folks that
Sure.
are listening right now. If you were going to give one piece of advice to a seller that's listening right now that's considering getting into sales leadership, what would be the one tip you would give that person to kind of prepare them, particularly for this new world order we've got with AI going on?
In sales leadership, right? And like probably if you get into leadership in a legacy company or it's a newer like a startup, it's probably going to be around AI, right? I don't know if there's a tip I have. It's more of a question, which is
Mhm.
why? Why do you want or think you need to get into leadership? Frankly, the best leaders kind of fall into it, right? They're kind of called upon because either natural leaders or they have some experience or subject matter expertise. Hopefully, right, they would want like to work with people and see becoming a leader as an opportunity to scale their efforts, to scale their methodology beyond their own individual practice. But knowing that you're managing people now and not processes or clients, it's a completely different job. So why? Like, why are you trying? If you're just kind of superficially trying to climb the ladder or want a promotion. Or I know when I turned 40 last year, I had a thought, which is like, man, I'm 40. Like, am I supposed to be an AE for life? Or like there's ageism in tech. At some point, people are going to ask, why didn't you get into leadership if you're so great at sales? So, we're all humans and have these concepts of progress that are kind of
Definitely.
pre-baked into our heads as far as what it means to be successful. You're going to have to go real beyond that though, before you try to dive into a leadership role. Like you really have to look internal at yourself and understand that there's going to be more uncontrollables. Are you okay with managing people knowing that probably there's a remote environment, right? We're not like kind of able to hallway monitor people maybe as easily as we used to when we were all crammed in the boiler room, although I know
Mhm.
maybe for that reason. leadership is asking their sales teams to come back to the office kind of at great scale now that we're a few years past the pandemic. So yeah, I don't know if I can, say a tip that would prepare anyone for becoming a leader. It's more just look in the mirror and ask yourself if you're okay with all of the uncontrollables that even come with managing a team of like 5 people. Like even a small sales team can get crazy. These people might be in different parts of the country where now we have microcultures, right? All over the country that include their work ethic, different time zones to manage, different needs. Different salespeople are good at different things at different times. So yeah, it's a different type of human job that includes a lot of uncomfortable managing, mitigating, and it's really more of like an organizational job than it is a sales job, right? So if you're great at sales, doesn't mean you're going to be a great leader at all. And yeah, it's something that I fell into because I was asked to be a sales director when it was clear that I was crushing, enterprise sales. I kind of jumped in it and it kicked my ass. I'm not going to lie. And I then had to learn how to become a better and a good sales leader over time, but from zero. Like me being like an amazing IC was not necessarily helpful. If anything, I might have made it harder to become a great leader because like my standard for myself was working 80 hours a week. Well, probably it's illegal for me to have that standard for my reps, right? So these are the things you need to consider.
Fantastic. And I agree with everything you said there. We could do a whole show just on that, I think. Josh, really appreciate you coming in to the show today. I know I greatly enjoyed our conversation, and I think we may have to have you back on to continue and probe a few more of the subjects that you brought up on today's call. If someone wanted to reach out to you to find out about Omni or find out a little bit more about your perspective on the industry, the market, or just sales leadership in general, what would be the best way for those folks to reach out to you?
Sure. And by the way, I promise I won't just like reverse try to sell you if you reach out to me. I keep my evenings and my weekends completely open for just talking to people, mentoring, up and coming sales folks. So yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can find me there. I'm also just Josh at Aomni, Omni, right, .com. Or even if you want to put my cell number in there, that's fine. You can list that at the bottom. It's good by me. So whatever your pleasure, just don't send me a carrier pigeon because I keep my windows closed.
Good advice. Matt, anything you'd like to go and say to the audience before we go and close up for today?
No, just that it's been really a pleasure talking with you, Josh. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I look forward to continue it at a future date.
Likewise, guys. And yeah, thank you both for coming up with the MOVE framework. Way less letters to memorize than MedPIC. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that one, Josh. Which, by the way, folks, speaking of, if you would like, you can go to our website, strategicsalesoptimization.com, and you can actually buy a copy of our MOVE framework right there on our website. Folks, it does bring us to the end of the show today, and I want to thank Josh for coming in again, and Matt, my colleague and my compatriot in arms here, for joining us to talk about this subject. And I think we're going to have a follow-up for this one here pretty soon. So folks, thanks for spending a little bit of time with us here at Software Sales Simplified, Move to Success, your home for learning how to become a better seller and learn more about the things that are happening in the industry, like you just learned from Josh here. If you would like, please follow, like, subscribe, leave a comment on this, or go right to our website and leave comments there. Let us know what you thought about this episode, ask us questions, or if there are any other topics you'd like us to cover, please share those with us there. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming in, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks, guys.